going on, guys? It's Zuko. Today we're going to be talking about aiming in depth. Uh, this one is going to be for Apex, but it translates to any game, and whether you're on mouse and keyboard or controller, this will still relate to you. This is going to be kind of like a teaching and coaching series, talking about the in-depth of aim, philosophy, drills, how to find your perfect sensitivity, all of that stuff. We're getting into everything. I'm going to make this pretty fast because I've made this video like 3 times already. I just wanted to make it shorter, more concise, more structured. So we're going to be going pretty fast. If you're ever kind of confused on something, pause it. I'm going to make sure I explain it well. Just pause it, think about it, and then try to find your way, or shoot me a message in the comments. I got you guys. So let's hop straight into it. So philosophies, ideologies. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. You have to practice perfect in order to make permanent that perfect practice. So you want to practice for perfection. You don't just practice with bad habits. You don't practice sloppy, because you're going to permanent that sloppy and that bad habit. So if you're shooting wrong a basketball, right? So let's say you're shooting wrong in basketball and you keep practicing. It will not make it perfect. No, it's going to make it permanent. Practice makes permanent, not perfect. You have to practice perfect with the right technique, the right fundamentals, whatever, to permanentize. That's even a word, to solidify that practice that you did, right? And not only does practice makes permanent, practice just makes permanent what you learn. Not everything that you're learning is actually going to correlate well into gameplay, so you need to be able to practice something that correlates well into gameplay. Because if you can't do that, it does not matter what you practice. If it does not apply, or if you're not applying it to real life situations or real combat situations, it's kind of like those kung fu masters doing all that crazy kung fu that does not fit well into real life combat, because somebody who can wrestle, somebody who can, do Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever, they're going to beat you up anyway. Doing all the hoo ha ya. Nah, that's not real fighting. That's movie scene fighting, right? So, and the only reason why their fighting styles do not work in real life scenarios is because they do not fight each other. They do not apply their art, which it is. It's an art. It's so beautiful to watch, but it does not apply well to real life situations, because the people who train them in that art do not fight each other. They spar or they'll do showcases, but it's not real fighting, so it doesn't correlate well into gameplay. It's kind of like that with aiming as well. The drills that you do, the way that you practice, has to correlate to gameplay. If it does not, then it's pointless. And so a lot of the things that we're going to talk about when we're going to be talking about perfect settings, I'm going to give you gameplay tests to find that perfect setting for you, so that way it correlates well into gameplay, and you're not building comfort in a place where it will not, or you're not building, a practice that's going to permanentize a skill that you're learning that does not correlate well into gameplay at all. So it's useless. So another one is practice hard so games are easy. If you ever heard the phrase "there's levels to this," that is completely true, and it stems from the fact that however hard you practice, you are building levels of your skill that's going to be much deeper than the level of just the average person, right? So like basketball, there is a level to the game. Even the worst NBA player is going to dust even a college athlete, right? Or like some little high schooler who was like kind of good or whatever, right? There's levels to the game. I don't care how good you are, there's levels to the game. And it's like that with everything in life. So the only way to build levels is to practice hard, so that way games are easy. The difficulty of shots that people take in practice by having people contest them, where they dribble with the ball in their hands, or they'll make the ball slippery, or they'll have to dribble 2 balls at once while they're trying to catch something else. That's making it so much harder. They're practicing so hard, so that way when they're just dribbling with 1 ball and person's in their face, it's almost like, this is easy, I don't have to really worry about them, they're just kind of there. If you can do that as well with aiming, and I'll show you how to do that, you will become God tier, to where no one in front of you becomes a threat and they're just shooting dummies. But you have to practice hard to get to that point. Again, levels to the game. Practice hard so games are easy. But before you can practice hard, you have to master the easy stuff first, because everything in life, you need to build a foundation that you can build upon. For example, slide jump is a core movement mechanic that you need to have mastered in order to be able to do any of the more advanced movement tech in the game, right? So slide jumping, it's like your bread and butter, right? This is like your common stuff, right? Like you can't really do too much in the game if you don't, like, you can't even bunny hop, right? If you don't have slide jump mastered, right? So you have to be able to slide jump. This is mastering the easy stuff first. Again, it's on a counter of 2 seconds, so 1, 2, and then you can slide again. Whether you jump down from a building, like right here, if you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, you can do another slide jump immediately. So again, mastering the easy stuff first. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Again, you can slide jump again, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You have to master the easy stuff first, and aiming is like a race from point A to point B. So point A to point B, some people pace themselves, right? Some people overextend and then they don't get to the finish line. They miss the finishing line and then they have to come back because they missed the checkpoint, right? That's bad because then you have to correct, right? And sometimes you can overcorrect and then you have to correct again. Some people hit obstacles and they stop and then they have to get there. So some people are Ferraris, some people are turtles. At the end of the day, if you can pace yourself from point A to point B, you're always going to be faster than the person who detours and has sloppy aim and overcorrects or whatever, and you're always going to be better than the person who stops and then has to find their target again, or they can overshoot as well once they stop and then they hit. If you pace yourself at a good speed, going straight from point A to point B, you're always going to be better than the person there. But again, you can still get beat by the Ferrari who is just as accurate, who knows how to beeline, and their pace is faster. That's what aiming is. Another philosophy or ideology is you want to become like a boxer with aiming, where you want to have defense, but your defense has to lead into offense, because having the best defense does not mean anything if it does not create offense for you. You have to be able to counterattack. A lot of people have good aim, but they don't have good movement. A lot of people have good movement, but they don't have good aim. A lot of people have, well, a few people have good aim and good movement, but they can't put the two together. Very, very few people have good aim and good movement, and they put the two together. Those people are the best players in the world. For example, a lot of people can't do this with their aim. As you can see, even I struggle with it, right? So if you can do aim and movement at the same time while you're tracking or you're doing some sort of advanced movement, you're going to be God tier, right? So just being able to do this and stay somewhat on target, you'll probably be better than most players, right? Just being able to do that. So you have to have movement and aim tied together, because your goal is to make people miss while you're hitting at the same time. Again, that's like a boxer. Your goal is to make them miss while you're hitting them. You do that by moving. You have to always be moving in the game. So your goal is to move while you're hitting your shots. If you can't do that, you're not going to be good. And if you do master this, you're going to be God tier. So that's another kind of philosophy ideology for you whenever it comes to aim. So now, since we got through all of the philosophy and ideologies, let's talk about personal background, FPS history, stuff like that. Linear, classic, exponential ramp, dual zone, differences between mouse and keyboard and console, all of that stuff. So FPS history throughout controllers has been either exponential ramps or more like a curvature that's not like this. It hasn't been until really recently that people have started doing linear response curve, which is 0 here if you're in the ALC settings, or 1. 1 is the highest that you can go where you're still kind of on a linear response curve. I would never recommend, if you're saying you're going to want to make the switch to linear, be on any response curve higher than 1. It makes a difference. And notice how I'm kind of at like 0.5. I'm not at 1, I'm kind of at like 0.5, because you can see a little bit there. I did that on purpose because I felt the difference between those two, and I felt like being completely 0 was just a little bit too sensitive, and I just didn't want it. But again, as long as you're from 1 to 0, you're good, and anywhere in between 1 and 0, you're good. But if you go to 1.5 or 2, you're now on more classic type of thing. So 2, 3, 4, 5 is classic. Anything above 5 is trash. In the highest level of competition, everyone's using either linear on these base settings or classic, which is this one right here, 4-3. Everyone's using that at the highest level of competition on controller. That's not just a fluke. There's a reason why. That's because this is where you're going to get the best results. However, I don't use the base settings because you can get these same settings and the same feel with the ALC settings, then you have more control and you can become better at certain things than just having these base settings, because these base settings have a lot of weaknesses and a lot of inconsistencies that you cannot change, but you can do that with advanced look controls. So again, FPS history has kind of always had response curve where it kind of it had, you know, like it went like this. So let me see if I can get that a little bit smoother to show you guys. It's more like this, and then it will speed up towards the outer edges, right? So you get a bunch of slowdown here, and then you get exponential like boost like right here. That was kind of the beginning of FPS history when it came to controllers. Over time, it's been kind of getting shorter and shorter to the point to where now almost everyone who's like trying to get that competitive advantage or that mouse and keyboard feel, they're going for this linear ramp here because everything is consistent. There's no inconsistencies in linear ramp. However much you move it, it's on a 1-to-1 ratio, which, if you didn't know, is the reason why PC aim dominates controller aim all the time. I was in the top 10%, top 7%, and top 4% of flicking, tracking, and then the drill where you had to hit as many targets and the time attack drill. I was 10 points away from pro level of my aim. Whenever I was on mouse and keyboard, I hit Diamond 1, and the only reason why I didn't hit Masters is because my homies that I was playing with stopped playing. I stopped playing the game because I didn't want to play with randoms. Started playing a different game, and then I sold my PC. So back on console, I was a pro on Ghost. So I had really good controller aim way back then whenever I was using those horrible response curves. Now, since I am back on controller, I've been playing Apex for about a week now. And within a week, I've been able to make a lot of progress, and I'll show you guys that in a second. And just from a week of practicing the right way, I've been able to, again, retrain my aim completely on controller, and again, be able to become really, really good with this linear response curve, which feels a lot like mouse and keyboard, which is on a 1-to-1 ratio. Unless you're a weirdo who uses acceleration on mouse and keyboard, it's like, okay, well, be weird if you want to, but linear is pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio. So what it means is, however much you move your right stick is however much it's actually going to move. So if I move it more, it's literally going to be exactly how much I move. That's going to determine how much this moves. So this is beautiful because this makes every adjustment that you do completely up to you. There's no slowdown, there's no speed up. You can always do this at this speed, and it's always going to be there, unlike how it is with, classic or exponential ramp. You can keep the same speed and it will speed it up, right? That's how it works. So it's like this will always be the same speed, always. So that is the beauty of linear ramp. Classic is more like here it's going to be very, very slow. Then when you get out here, it's going to start speeding up, and then you get out here, it's going to be really, really fast. That can build a lot of inconsistency. So that's the reason why I say if you are on classic, it is a good setting because it's kind of like that comfort between gameplay and then like the best feel that you can get. So I can understand why a lot of people are on it, but linear will always beat classic, always, if you can be as accurate. Again, pace, right? Some people are turtles, some people are Ferraris. So, and then we have exponential ramp, which is horrible. We're not even going to even talk about it, but let's talk about dual zone, because dual zone is actually a really good balance in between the two, which is more of like a thing that we've kind of picked up from Overwatch. So dual zone is basically like this. So if, let's say you max this out of threshold, and if you can see here, this is kind of like your first zone, and this is like your second zone, right? So for this first zone, everything with these two settings will affect what's in this area. Your turning extra yaw for this or this will always affect this outer area. So even if you were, and that's the reason why I didn't like Overwatch's dual zone, because you didn't have as much control over like the sensitivity for this zone and the sensitivity for this zone, but you have better control of it in Apex. So if you wanted to run dual zone, you could run something like that. Even though I would recommend this being your dual zone, so that way you have a larger like range of motion that you can use for like these minor like movements for tracking or whatever. But if you just wanted to, let's say if you wanted to be on linear, right? You can be on linear, and then you can do this, and all of this can be like a very, very low sensitivity for you on linear, so that way you can have these like fine-tuned adjustments, again, that 1-to-1 ratio PC feel. And then you can have like a large boost here, so that way you can still make your 180s and stuff like that. So if you wanted to do dual zone, that's how you would do so. But I would always just not have this on. But that's kind of like where controller like sensitivities or aiming styles have kind of originated from. And almost all of the best players and controllers have been making the move to linear or as close to linear as possible, because again, that 1-to-1 ratio is very consistent. Your hand-eye coordination, it just feels right. So yeah, now since we gotten through the personal background and all that, let's get straight into the video where we start talking about all of the things. So finding your perfect setting, right? My philosophy with that is, don't look for comfort, look for gameplay. If you always look for comfort, you will be the own enemy of your own progress. What is comfortable may not actually be good, and what tastes good may not actually be healthy for you. Make sure your settings correlate well into gameplay, and that's why whenever we're going to be doing these tests to show you guys, the person who's watching this video, your perfect setting, I'm going to give you a gameplay test. And anytime I go to any game on any game ever, whether it was on controller or if I was on my PC and I was using mouse and keyboard, I would do these tests every single different game to make sure the aim that I'm using correlates well into that game, because not every game you want to have the same aim, unless you're on PC, which is your aim can be universal. But you always want to make sure your aim correlates well into gameplay. What type of game are you playing? Is it fast paced? Is it slow paced? Is there a lot of verticality? Is there not a lot of verticality? All of that stuff plays into your aim for that game. So again, don't look for comfort, look for gameplay. So here's how you're going to be able to find your perfect settings, but first you have to choose two options before you start finding that perfect setting. And the first one is your field of view. I would recommend you max this out because this makes your gun not as much in the way, makes your recoil not like as taxing. It also makes your movement a little bit easier to kind of like see. You can see more, so it's not like you're moving faster, but it feels like you kind of are. But if you lower this, as you can see, it's like you can't even see yourself, and it's very bad. Not only that, but it makes your race look longer, right? It makes your race look longer. And this also actually changes your sensitivity of your aim. So you want to pick one and then leave it there forever. You never want to touch this again once you do it, because this is the distance from this to this, right? If I did this on 70 now, that's the same motion that I'm making, right? And look at how much of a difference that is doing, right? So you pick your setting for your field of view and you leave it there. This makes your recoil not feel as heavy if you have it on a higher one. Makes it to where you can see more. Makes your race not look as long, but it also makes it to where making that adjustment, it feels like, okay, well, that's just here to here. It makes it to where, like, since you only have so much of a radius on your right stick, having, I have a little bit of stick drift, but I just deal with it because, I mean, I'll talk about that in a second. But having the ability to do this to here is very good, because if I was on a closer field of view, it's like I have to basically move this more to get to that same area, right? So your goal with field of view as a controller player, who's, especially if you're on linear aim, is you want to be able to move as much as you can without getting to the maximum input of your right stick, because the moment you're at maximum, then you're going to have to hold maximum for a certain amount of time that your brain has to remember in order to be able to hit certain shots, right? Or remember like your 180s, or let's say those, or your 360s, right? You're going to have to remember how long you have to hold at maximum. So I always recommend you make your field of view as high as possible, so that way your maximum, like before you like reach maximum, you can pretty much like go from here to here, right? Which is good, because as long as you can do a 90 without hitting maximum, that means any shot that you try to hit from here to here, if you practice it, can be very consistent. So that's kind of the deal with field of view, and what I would recommend you just max it out. It does make objects look smaller, but I mean, that's the price you pay for being God tier. Um, then you also want to determine what aim assist you're going to be using. If you're going to be playing on base, I mean, just good luck with that. I would recommend you be on ALC because again, you can have these same settings and they can have that same feel, but you can have more control down to the direct number. I'm actually on 148 for a specific reason because I just feel like that is where I can track the most, and then I don't have problems tracking at this range with linear, which is where linear begins to sort of like, fall off, right? This is where linear is the hardest to play, right? But again, as you master these minor adjustments, you can become God tier, right? So yeah, that's the reason why I have why I'm on ALC and why I have certain settings the way that they are. But you're going to have to figure out what your aim assist is. And that's in these two settings right here. Default is basically like this. As you can see, it basically kind of brings me to a stop. Now, if I move fast past it, move slowly past it, it's like that. If I switch to PC, as you can see, it doesn't hold me as much. So if I go faster, see how it doesn't hold me as much, right? And then if I switch it back, it almost brings me to a complete stop, right? So that's the differences between those two. I would always recommend the one that feels the best for you. I would say get to PC. I'm actually moving towards PC, but because of the fact that I'm on linear and like I said, I've only been playing on controller for about a week now. And I've made a lot of progress. So I need that heavier slowdown, because all that aim assist does is it slows you down as you get to the target. I need that slowdown to be able to make these minor adjustments from out here and not overshoot. And for like, let's say like recoil control, because my middle area is so sensitive, recoil controlling from this deep with certain weapons is very vital to me actually being able to be competitive in this game, right? So as you can see, like this gun will shoot up and I have to be very, very consistent with that. So that's why I have it on default now. But as I get better with my aim and I practice the perfect way, I'll be able to, move this to PC. And again, it'll give you less of a slowdown. So it'll make it to where, you'll have to recoil control more. As you can see how much heavier that was, right? So again, you'll have to just get used to both, but as you can see, this just feels better because it's less of an inconsistency and it feels more like your 1-to-1 ratio, right? So it's actually easier for me to recoil control from out here. But let's say if I'm trying to make minor adjustments, it's like, man, see what I'm saying? See how I'm getting off target more, right? So the moment I feel like I got that minor adjustment better, I will make that switch to PC target style. So you have to determine this first before you start doing all the other things for your gameplay. Another thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to know how you're going to hold your controller. There's index fingers on the triggers, there's index fingers on the bumpers, and then your middle fingers on the triggers, which is claw. Claw to me feels the best whenever it comes to like let's say for example dry firing, which is an actual real life thing. A lot of people don't realize, like, if you're holding your index fingers, like based on the way that you're holding the triggers, it'll determine how your palm is and how much like of your actual thumb you can use for aiming. So if you can't aim with your index fingers without your aim like shooting like left, right, down, whatever, then you're probably not holding the controller in a good way. Sometimes you have to go claw, so that way you can kind of raise your palm up so your thumb is sitting more over the right stick. So that way it allows for you to basically fire like this, and it doesn't affect your. Now again, the gun is going to sway, and like there's breathing that kind of translates into the game as well. But for the most part, stand still. You need to have an aim where if you're resting your right stick, it does not move you, right? So that's your goal, depending on the way that you're holding your controller. But I would recommend claw, because I feel like it's the most consistent one. And you're gonna have much easier time making minor adjustments whenever you're on claw, because again, your whole palm is raised naturally whenever you're on claw, and you have easy access to buttons. And if you're on claw, you'll be able to kind of rest the like right where your joint of your thumb is, that kind of that meaty part after that. You can rest that right in the center and then use your whole thumb. So that way you don't like, in order to move left, you don't actually like move your thumb like down inward to the controller, and then you don't pinch your thumb up to go, right. So if you can like raise your whole palm up and raise your whole arm up and use your whole thumb as your pendulum or apparatus. I don't know. I don't know what I really mean, but hopefully you guys get what I mean. If you can use your whole thumb without having to bend it to make the adjustment, you'll be able to make much finer, adjustments, especially when it comes to tracking, because your whole thumb is being used to make these adjustments and not just like a a very small part of your hand. Now you can actually do both, because whenever I was on like keyboard or mouse, what I did was I aimed with my forearm, and then whenever it was time for me to do tracking at like really long distances, I would literally plant my hand down and I would plant my wrist down and then use my wrist moving left to right for tracking. So I would have like two different modes for like one's for flicking, one's for target acquisition, and then one's for tracking. You can kind of do that with controller as well. So just try to find that position that works for you. If you don't feel comfortable with a raised up palm and using your whole thumb without bending as like your targeting thing, then you can just lower it a little bit, and then if that's what's comfortable for you, then you can do that. But I will let you guys know, you can be very, very consistent if you play on claw and then you raise your whole thumb and you use your whole thumb as a way to move without bending it, because then your whole thumb becomes this like, it's like this walking I don't even know, it's like you're using your whole forearm instead of just using like the edge of your thumb, right? If that makes sense. So the more muscle groups that you can involve into like a aiming thing, the bigger the muscle group, the easier it's going to be to make certain movements. Now, whenever it comes to minor adjustments, your smaller arms your smaller muscles are going to be better at that. So just kind of keep that in mind whenever you're finding out what you're doing with your thumb placement and then how you're holding your controller. So now since we got rid of all of that, let's get straight into these gameplay tests to find the perfect settings for you. So the first one that we're going to do is your yaw speed. So we already talked about response curve and outer threshold. I would recommend this on the lowest. Dead zone and response curve, I would recommend your response curve on 0 or 1. So that way you're on linear aim. If you can't deal with that, deal with it. It's better for you. Just try to get used of it. If you still don't want to do it, I would recommend no higher than 5, because that's more like classic. If you want to, have that best feel, I would recommend that. And then for dead zone, you want to be able to, again, because it's on a 1-to-1 ratio on linear aim, you want to be able to make the minorest adjustment without stick drift. Even though I do have some stick drift, but I need that ability to do that for tracking purposes, so I just deal with the stick drift, because it'll only happen if I let go of my right stick, and then it'll keep going in the direction only if I'm like not aimed in, or like if I'm like moving it down and then I forget about it because I'm still like my hand's still kind of moving in that direction like that. So it's not really stick drift, it's just us not used of the sensitivity most of the time. So I'm just like, well, I'll just deal with it because I need that sensitivity for tracking, especially at longer ranges, so that way I can make the minorest adjustment and still be able to hit. So it helps with that, but also for recall control purposes. So your dead zone, you want that low so that way you can recall control. Also on linear aim, recall control is the easiest that it's ever going to be, right? So you get the R9, and it's just like you really don't even have to think about it whenever it comes to like vertical recall. You can just beam immediately, right? So that's kind of how it is with like linear aim and then your dead zone. You want a dead zone that allows for you to just kind of, not even think about, vertical recall. I'm not really recalling left or right or anything. I'm just literally just holding down by a little. Like, when I mean a little, I mean like this much. Alright, so that's how much I'm holding it down, so like this. And I'm getting all of this recall control just from that, right? So that makes like an R9 on controller being able to beam like way out here. So it's like, what's the point of even having a Chrono Zen or like recall mods if you can just, again, get yourself on a setting where you can be fine-tuned in your adjustments and be able to beam this far out with an R9. Again, like I said, there's no need to cheat. There's no need to do all that stuff. You could just practice perfect. You can get to this point, right? So, I would recommend your dead zone being as low as you can without stick drift. But even if you get stick drift, if it's not like, if it's just too sensitive and you're not used to like your stick like actually being here, right? But if you, let's say you take your hand off your controller and you're still moving, that's true stick drift. But if you're on linear aim, like you'll be like, oh, I'm getting stick drift, but I'm like, oh wait, no, that's actually me just still holding this slightly to the left. That's not stick drift. That's actually just how like good linear aim is at registering your inputs in a 1-to-1 ratio. So yeah, that's that. So now let's do these gameplay tests to actually find out these settings here, which is going to be your yaw speed, pitch speed, turning extra yaw, and all of these, right? So we went over all of the other stuff. Let's get into these because these are going to be the most important ones in determining your aim. And again, we're going to use gameplay tests to find these perfect settings for you. So yaw speed is going to be determined by this drill here, right? Being able to track if this feels natural. If you're over correcting, so like this, if you're doing like this on your linear aim, it's too high for you, right? So you need to lower it down. If you're doing this and it's like you're always lagging behind, then it's too low for you. But if you can keep it somewhat on target like this, then you know you have a good aim. And then you want to start moving it back a little bit. And if you can keep this sort of, you know, consistency with being on the target, right? Oh my gosh. Then you know you got yourself a good aim setting for you, right? And this will just kind of get better over time. So just don't worry about it too much. But as long as you can stay somewhat consistent with this, then you know you found yourself a good aim setting, right? And you'll build up consistency over time as you just like practice and fight and whatnot. You'll begin to learn and get really used to this setting. I'm holding my controller wrong, so I'm not able to be when I'm trying to make movements to the right. But you'll figure all of these things out. So this is a good way to determine your yaw speed. Another thing that you're going to need to do in order to determine your yaw speed is, again, 90s, 180s, whatever that is, and then full 360. The 360 are going to be weird because the aim assist clicks for them, but let's say if I get higher, right? So this should all feel like pretty natural, like your 180s especially, your 90s especially, because again, you're going to be on that linear 1-to-1 ratio. It's going to feel like, oh, well, that's a 90 because I'm moving at 90 degrees. I know what 90 degrees are like mentally. So hand-eye coordination. Oh, that's 90 degrees. Oh, that's 180 degrees. Oh, that's that many degrees. Oh, 360 degrees would be about right here, right? So you get what I'm saying? That'll become very easy. You need to have a setting that makes this feel natural so that way you can do it. Now, if you wanted to kind of have a lower setting for tracking right here, right, and still be able to 180 where you want it to, then you can go ahead and do this and max these out, and you can feel the difference between those two. And what it'll basically do is this would be, it won't really mess with your 90s because you can get 90 degrees. So 90 degrees will be here. You can get 90 degrees without really having to like do maximum input, because the turning extra yaw will only affect you whenever you get to, again, the outer threshold. So again, let's say if I bump this up to here, see how it immediately kicks in, right? Because see, that's when it kicks in, and that can be very bad for you. So that's why I say just lower it as much as possible. But if you want to be able to turn really fast at the very like edge of your maximum, then this will help you do not 90s faster, because again, 90s you can just do that with the flick. That can be natural. But this will help your 180s if you wanted your 180s to be faster, so that way you can like do like this, right? So this can allow for you to turn around very quick, or let's say even if you want to do advanced movement like this, whatever, right? So that'll help you in stuff like that without you sacrificing your strafing ability or tracking or whatever. So that's what this does. I just have mine on 20 because I mean I don't really need much more than that because I can still do this, right? I want that 1-to-1 ratio feel, even though this to me feels like natural and comfortable. Uh, this will feel more like PC like, and it'll be more like able to compete with PC if you're like, because PC players can do this like legit easily, and it's not inconsistent. But as you can see, that's a little bit inconsistent for me, so I don't have the setting on that high. But you could do that if you just wanted to turn faster. And let's say if you didn't want the extra pitch to be crazy, you can do like this. So you could like, hold on one second, bruh. You could like put this, let's say 30 lower, and then you could do like that. So that way it doesn't kick in, and you can just like have this as your way to kind of have PC like target acquisition when it comes to like turning around. But again, that's kind of a setting that you just have to fill out. So that's your yaw speed. Pitch speed is for this. So you kind of tracking the zip line, right? And you could do it slow, right? You do it faster. All right, you can even do this one up here. Do it slow, right? Hold on one second. Do it faster. And that'll determine if you have a good pitch speed. Another way to determine if you have a good pitch speed is, again, recall control, right? So if a gun kicks up quite a lot, right? As you can see, I have a lot of pitch speed. But that's kind of what pitch speed is also for as well. You can use that as a way to see if your pitch speed is too much or too little. The main one I would focus with pitch speed is, again, it's more for like your diagonals. I mean your diagonals, right? So like diagonals will be like tracking like this. So let's say you wanted to track that. If you're overshooting, so let's do it for this one. So if you're going like this with your pitch speed, that means your pitch speed is too high. If you're trying to track this naturally and you're staying under it like this, I mean your pitch speed is too low, right? Now, you would actually want these two numbers to be the exact same, and as I get better over time, I will, because this was actually at one point at 307, now it's at 337, and my goal is to basically keep moving this up and keep bumping this up, because I'll be bumping it up like this. But again, see how I'll go over, as because I'm not used of the current aim setting that I'm on now, so I just keep it here, and once I build more muscle memory with that one, I'll bump it up, kind of how it is for this one as well. Again, diagonals, this was like 3 days ago at 108, and then 3 days ago it was at 108. Yesterday it was at 118. Today is at 128. I'm building it up over time because I'm practicing perfect, and I'm getting much more use of pitch in that ADS area. And so eventually my goal is to have this 148, 148 both. So that way my diagonals feel exactly how it would be. Because even though these are like not the same, right? See how I'm undershooting horizontally, right? The reason why that is because of the fact that I don't have these numbers on the same. So I'll just bump this up, and then look how they're going to be towards the same. Now I've trained myself for the aim that I'm currently on, but you see how that's a 1-to-1 ratio. That's going to feel much more like PC aim, because it's like, okay, exactly how much I move it up, that's exactly how much it is, right? It's like I don't have to second guess that. I don't have to, because how much you go up is how much you're going to go left. But if you lower your pitch speed, well, you don't go up as fast as you go left. So then you have to like basically go up more, and that kind of makes a break, an inconsistency in your aim. So that's what I mean by that. But nevertheless, you do want these numbers to be the same. So if you can just start off with these the same, you can. But due to the way that I kind of got into this game immediately playing with my friends, and I needed something that was still going to be able to compete so I wouldn't be trash. But as time goes on, every single day I'm getting closer and closer to these two being the same. And as you can see, I've been practicing to kind of bump this up to 138, and then once I get to 148, then we'll be golden. But again, it is sensitive, especially for recall control, which is another thing that you're going to be using for pitch speed. I can pretty much beam with that by holding it down, right? Now, I want to bump this up to 130 probably like tomorrow because I feel like my recoil control will be even better. So I'll just go ahead and show it real quick. Sorry about that. All right. So I just feel like my recoil control is going to be so much better by me being on 138 because that feels much more natural and much more realistic to the recoil control. Because once you learn the recoil of a weapon and then your aim is consistent, it's like, okay, well, I know that gun's kicking up this much, and then I'll be able to beam. You see what I'm saying? You see how my aim is just automatically, my recoil is so much better with that. So I am going to make that jump pretty soon. But you have to, again, train yourself for the first one, so that way you don't break yourself too much, because you're having, again, master the easy stuff first. So that's your test for your yaw speed. And again, for your yaw speed, I mean your pitch speed, for your yaw speed, ADS, you're going to be doing the same thing, and you're going to back up, keep backing up, all of that, right? And your goal is to just stay on target, all of that, right? Even if you get way out here, and again, you're going to just master those minor movements, all the deals, right? So that way you can still beam from out here. So that's kind of what you're aiming for with your linear aim, and then your yaw speed and your pitch speed. Pitch speed is, again, your horizontals, I mean your verticals, or your diagonals going up at a slant or going straight up and down. So recoil control, yaw speed is more for like strafing. And then for example, there's two types of strafing in this game. There's mock tracking, right? So you need to be able to find a setting that mock tracks, and then opposite track. So let me actually turn the bottom one really quick. Let me see the time, 42 minutes. All right, I gotta speed up. All right, so this is opposite tracking. You actually have to move your right stick more in order to keep up with them. And then whenever they switch directions, you have to actually like make a really quick flick to get back on target, because again, you're making a big adjustment. But mock tracking is whenever you're following their movement, right? And whenever you're doing mock tracking, you only have to make a minor adjustment to get back on target, right? So mock tracking is really good, and the difference between mock tracking and then opposite tracking is opposite tracking will work really well against newbie players, or like people who are beginners or just like not very skilled with their aim, because making big adjustments consistently is going to throw their aim off. And then mock tracking will actually throw off a lot of higher skilled players, because they're going to be used to opposite tracking, because they're going to be really good at making, smooth, big adjustments. But making minor adjustments is where everyone kind of struggles in life, because that's just the harder part, because it takes a lot more skill to make minor adjustments with the controller, and especially if they're on like classic or something like that, where you have less control, because there's like a built-in dead zone. So it's like you can't be as consistent as you would like to be. But with linear, making these minor adjustments do become easier over time, until you get, again, like way out there with that range. You have to be very, very small in your motions. So that's kind of the difference between those two. So if you want to like kind of have a little tip for like combat, is if you're ever like doing opposite tracking and you don't want to have to like flick to get back on target like that, you could just do a mock track after that, and then like do a quick flick, and you're pretty much, you just follow their motions, right? It's allow for you to be pretty easily, right? So those are the two types of strafing, and you need to aim that feels good with that. And then the next one is door watching. So door watching is basically going to be you doing this. So let's say you're going through a door, you need to be able to track like the peak of this door, right? And yeah, you could be like super like close to it like that, but for the most part, you don't want to lead it too much, because you just want it to be like let me just make them stop moving really quick. You don't want to lead it too much, because you still want to actually do it like as if you're ready to shoot the moment you see somebody, and then beam, right? So you don't want to like do it too much, like, so just enough to where you can do like that. So let's say I'm going for the next bot, always have it. So don't do it like this, because let's say the person's there and then it's like, okay, well, my aim's here, right? You always kind of want to like let your gun lead you through the peak. You need an aim that allows for you to do that, right? And that's for a faster gun like the R9. Let me grab a slower one. Give me a second. 3. Right. So again, peek through the door. Oh, as a person, and then you beam. So that's called door watching. You need to have an aim that allows for you to do that, because that's a vital part of actually aiming. And then the last one, which is the more important one, movement mixed with aim. You need to have an aim that fits well with the movement of the game. For example, so this is set to run speed. So this is somebody running, right? So if somebody runs past me, I can track them without really having to worry about too much, right? So I'm like, oh, there's a person, bam, right? Could be dead, right? So you need to have a ability, a yaw speed or whatever that can deal well with movement. But again, like kind of how we talked about earlier over here, same thing with, let's say if I put this to zip line. All right, so if someone's on a zip line, you need to have a yaw speed that can track that, right? Now I wouldn't do this like, I would do this more ADS, right? And again, you can use either mock tracking or whichever tracking you want to kind of keep up with this. So I think mock tracking makes this the easiest, because again, the zip line moves very fast. But if you wanted to do opposite, again, it's going to be much more of a motion. So it's up to you, but just being able to track that is going to be very important. But it's also like that for like, just like, let's say movement like jumping, right? So whenever you jump, as you can see, it goes down and then up, right? But since the body is there, it really is just only going above his head, like on the later part of the jump, and then it like goes down up again whenever you land. So once you know how the game works, you can basically, okay, I just go down and then I go up for the last part, so I don't like hit those last 4 down. So it's like down and then up, right? Like that. So all of these shots are hitting all of them, right? So that's movement mixed with aim. You need an aim ADS that can actually do that to where it doesn't feel like too much of a chore, right? So you need to be able to do that to where it's like, oh, I don't have to think about it. It needs to be minor adjustments, not a major adjustment, because you have to like go down and up. Like, okay, how are you going to go down and up and then move left to right at the same time? It needs to be something that's just like up, bop, right? So you need an aim setting that is high enough to where you can do this without really having to think about it. Same thing for crouch. Whenever you crouch, it goes down so you can go up, and then whenever you let go of crouch, and whenever you let go of crouch, it's very fast. So you have to go down really fast. You have to go up slowly, down really fast, up slowly, down really fast, up slowly, down really fast. You need to have an aim setting that allows for you to do this naturally without you having to worry about too much. Something like that. So that's that one. So that's jumps, and then that's crouch, and then again, if you try to tie them together, again, and that's for ADS, that's for slide. That's a little bit of mess up there, right? And as you get better with this, you'll become God tier. This is actually how you become God tier, by the way. If you can jump and then beam this whole clip, again, this is the largest armor that we have in the game, and I was able to almost kill this person with an R9, jumping and sliding, right? So that's kind of like how you become God tier at 1v1s, and how you beat people before they're like, okay, how did that person kill me, bro? Like, what? Whenever you see people doing advanced movement and then they're beaming you, bro, these are the deadliest players, because if you aren't beaming them at the same time while they're doing this movement, so let's say the bot jumped and then slid, if you can't beam them, well, then you just lost that fight, right? So keep that in mind every time you're doing this. This is actually the most important one out of them all, because this is going to make you God tier. Same thing with like let's say you try to, how much time? 49 minutes. Okay, we're doing not too bad on time. So let's say if you wanted to track for movement off of this, right, and then track from there, right? So let me actually do that again. Wow, I hate this thing because it's so thin, bro. Yeah, and that's whatever. I hate these things, bro. It happens every single time. Look at this. All right, let's see. All right, bro. Okay. We'll do this. Okay, we can't. Okay, let's say you hopped off of this thing, bruh. Let's just say you hopped off of this thing, and you just did it like that, and then you would track, right? And let's say you landed a little bit more to the ledge like this, and you would try to track from there. I can't do it, bro. I literally can't. And that one right there, that's the one I was looking for. And then you would learn the track from there. But again, these are the harder things to master. Again, master the easy stuff first. Then you can work on stuff like this. So that way you can work on it. And again, every time you do that, be like mindful of like whenever you touch these walls, like how it makes your aim, you know. So like this is just like a kind of little basic jump or whatever. There's also fatigue jumping and all that stuff in the game, but being able to do that and stay on target is god tier. Because if you have like the R3 or whatever, let me see, right, and able to track that, you'll be god tier. Because not too many people can track you while you're doing these kind of movements. But if you can beam while you're doing that, you're going to be absolutely god tier. Nobody's going to touch you. So these are the kind of drills that make you better at the game. And again, the better you get at this, the better you're going to be. But practice that stuff later whenever you have like the strafing and all that stuff mastered, because you need to master that part of your aim first, because this is going to determine how good you can do all the rest of the stuff depending on the game that you're playing. So let's talk about scope and unscope. So the reason why I say don't add any of this in there, or any of this, all of this should be 0 except these two. These could be wherever you want them to be. This you can actually max if you wanted to. Just make sure you're consistent with it. As long as your auto threshold is as low as it can be, then I wouldn't mind you actually maxing this out. It's only going to help you in a certain case, but it's still an inconsistency that can get you in trouble if you're not used to it. But nevertheless, I'll say if you need it, then go ahead. But these two you never turn on, and then these you never turn on, because why would you ever want your maximum to be so much faster and not at a 1-to-1 ratio, especially whenever you can just aim out and then do like this to find your target again, right? So because again, like I said, this is on a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you can get used to like this flick, right, then you'll know exactly how much you need to do it. And you can do that slow, and you can do that faster. Oh, I messed up it there. But as you can see, like you can do that slow and then you can do that fast. It's just completely up to you, right? So I would never put that setting on, because it's always going to be easier for you to do that. And again, nothing in this game moves faster than the zip line, right? So as you can see, I have way too much, right, for a zip line. So there's nothing in the game that can move so fast unless there's like a person that passes you up in, like a 1v1, and in that case it's like, okay, well then why are you even aimed in, trying to aim in like that? Outscope, so that way you can actually be faster yourself, and your crouches like go lower, right? Because like right here, it's how low a crouch goes, and then here it's how low a crouch goes. You look lower whenever you do a crouch, whenever you're not aimed in. So there's no point in ever actually like if someone's passing you up and staying aimed in to try to like have a full, like, there's no point in that, right? You might as well just kind of unscope and then follow them there. So that's my tips for that. So let me see here, 53 minutes. All right, cool. There's one more thing I have to talk about, which is going to be your per optic settings. These are mine right now. This is closer to a field of view, not a 1-to-1 ratio. You wouldn't want a 1-to-1 ratio one on console. It just doesn't work. It's way too sensitive. Even a field of view ratio, which would basically be one up of currently what I have. This would be 1.5. This would be 1.6, 1.6, 1.8, 1.8, 1.8. That is like cool and everything, but it just doesn't work. I brought each of these one under the field of view kind of settings, because of the fact that I wanted it to be sensitive enough to where I could still be good with the weapon at a long range. So for example, let me just take the R3, right? So I'm not too great with the R3's recall, but that's my recall for the R3 right now. Down to the left, and then there. So not too good with it. Let's just say I did this. Hold on, that's I should throw this away. It's not what I wanted. Do that. Do that. Cool. And do that. Cool. So let's just go ahead and hop over here. Actually, I'll just stay right here. Actually, so we'll put this on. So this is your 1 times, right? So this is this setting here. 1.4. I mean 1 point. So it's basically your pure aim. I just have this at 1 point because it's just a pure aim, right? It feels really nice, really smooth. Some people have this at 1.3, some people have this at 0.9. I say just put it at 1 because that's a good starting point for you, and it builds off of your field of view settings for the rest of them. So I just have this at 1, and my recoil control is basically still the same, right? And then I switch it to the 2 times, right? And this is where a lot of people start to struggle because they can't keep their recoil the same because they don't have these per optic settings configured right. And then let's say you switch to the 3 times, which is why a lot of people don't like this side, but I love this side because it zooms me in, and again, I can still beam the same way before, even though I technically do have it not on a field of view rating, just because if the moment I see how my recoil shoots up just a little bit more, that's okay, because I want it to be sensitive enough to if I am tracking someone way from out here, I'm able to, you know, make those minor adjustments and not be like as if like I can't do it, right? So I'll take, you know, a knock in like consistency if it means I just hit those first shots or whatever, right? And this is with the weapon that, again, like, my recoil is not the best with. So as long as you can burst with it, then you're good. So then you could take that and then do something like this. Another way to test to see if your settings for your per optics are good is can't track, then you're probably not on a setting that's fast enough, right? So let me just go ahead and actually put him on, is he on random intervals? Let me do it like this. Check time 56, cool. I wanted to make it an hour long. We'll just do him since he's not moving. You want to be able to beam, right, like that. As long as you can do that up close, then you're good, right? As long as you can hit somebody walking, then you're good. So then you take the 2 times and make sure you can do the same thing, and it's not too much of a problem, right? So you just make sure you can beam somebody, right? And then you take the 1 times or the 4 times, all right? And you make sure you can do the same thing, all right? And as you can see, this is the reason why I love these optics. Anytime I see an optic that zooms in, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take it, because at the end of the day, this is a very long range game, and if I can see deeper, that means I just have to control my recoil better. So I get to actually be less sensitive, which means it could get easier or it could get harder for me. It depends on however it feels, but for the most part, that that recoil control becomes fairly easy whenever you put on these deeper scopes, because you have on a lower sensitivity because of the FOV. It can make you a little bit more of a beamer if you are already struggling with like minor adjustments because you just haven't built the muscle memory for it yet. But yeah, that's per optic settings for you. So now let's talk about the drills that you can do in order to become god tier at this game. So I'm going to go extremely fast because I want to make this a 1 hour long video. So the first one is going to be your SOA. So if you're trying to get more of like horizontals, use this 3rd dot. So that's 1, 2, 3. This 3rd one all the way to here. You stand in any one of those ranges and you crouch. Everything is going to be horizontal, right? Horizontal everything, right? You only have a few diagonals, and you do very, very slow motions like this. And this will get so tedious and so boring for your brain that it'll be like, okay, I know the motions for going from here to here. Once your brain learns the race, it'll try to pick up the pace naturally. It's kind of like your brain whenever you read a text message that has like 2 U's in it, your brain will automatically like auto-correct it, because it's like, okay, well, I know what they meant to do, right? So it's like, even though you're going this slow and you're forcing yourself to go this slow, your brain's gonna be like, okay, well, I know what you're trying to do, but like I already know how to do that, so I'm gonna just go a little bit faster. And then your brain will just naturally speed things up, and you're just like, okay, well, I don't even have to think about it, and then you'll just be able to do it, right? So that's how you kind of train for this drill. You just want to do slow, consistent movement, straight to the target. Again, no detours, straight there. And again, your brain will speed that up for you. Don't speed it up. All right, so that's your first drill. Your second one is going to be to grab a hemlock. Try to go fast. Let's see the time, not 59 minutes. All right. So you go here, 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 and then you just shoot all these targets as much as you can. You want to practice this here. Never miss a shot. The goal is to, if you do miss, make sure you don't miss the second shot, but your goal is to never miss. You want to hit all of these targets, even the ones in the back from here. You want to shoot it here. You're going to want to go ahead and shoot it here. Then you're going to want to go ahead and shoot it up here. Right here. And then you're going to climb up one more. And then shoot it at the very top up here, right? This is where I spend the most of my time on my linear aim, because these are the hardest shots without the aim assist. But I'm doing this to build, again, that muscle memory and that minor adjustment in my hand. And again, like I said, these are the hardest ones, and I'm not trying to go for perfection here because this is a video, but your goal will be to aim for perfection. Don't overextend, so that way your body can remember exactly the ranges for all of these. So that's your second drill. And then your third drill is actually going to be flick tracking. So you flick and then you track, right? So flick, track, flick, and then track, flick, and then track, right? And if that's without aim assist, and then another range that you can do it is flick and then track, right? And you can do flick and then track, right? So that's another one. And then here, flick and then track. And you can also do that with a consistent weapon instead of a burst weapon like the Hemlock, and you can actually shoot those targets. Try to use it with different weapons, one the SMG, one an AR, so that way you can get different ranges. And if you wanted to do it where you actually have the aim assist, where you have the inconsistency, you can do flick and then put this bot on here, and then you could just flick. Now this is going to be very inconsistent because, again, their aim assist is going to glue you, so the 1-to-1 ratio is kind of being negated by this. So this will actually feel easier if you went to PC aim really quick on that one. That'll feel easier because you'll be able to snipe that really quick like that, and then be able to get back on target. So just kind of heads up, if you're going to do that on default, it is going to be a lot harder because you're going to have to actually overextend in order to get to that target. So yeah, that's the second drill. That's called flick tracking, and you can do that with a consistent weapon and one that's fast and one that's slow, so AR and SMG. And then your last drill is actually going to be the one that we've been kind of doing already, which is your movement tracking, right? This is going to make you God tier, where you just kind of go around. First you aim, try to just make sure you stay on body. Then once you get there, try to make sure you aim for the head and try to get there. So that's like your next level. If you can do that and master that, you'll be God tier. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have for you guys. Is Zuko signing out. Peace out.